And today you've got children's books and stuff which are talking about reptilian morphing into humans and stuff, and what we call shape-shifting. Now, of course, when you're talking about this for the first time, about shape-shifting, I mean, people go, crikey, what is he on? Because understandably, what they're perceiving is a solid body changing into a solid body. Not possible, mate. Yeah, no, I agree with you, but I ain't saying that. Because there is no physical, therefore there's not a shape shift from a physical solid body to another solid body. The Queen is a hologram, like we're all holograms. And if she shifts, it's because the hologram has shifted, the decoding system in the observer has shifted, not her physical body. And what you have are 3 different levels of control, though it goes on further. But that's for another day, another time, and a lot more research. But this is one level of it, which is the dark suits, as I call them. And I found this picture on the internet. I thought, how perfect. They're like hollow shells, holographic hollow shells. Not necessarily all of them, but significant numbers are. Others are just gophers who don't know what's going on and are just play the game without realizing what the game they're playing. Behind them are those that operate in the shadows that I talked about earlier, who, no matter who's in power, what party or what name, the same shadow people are orchestrating events. As they say in America, it doesn't matter who you vote for, the government still gets in. And the government are these shadow people who are there, whoever comes in and out with a rosette on or a name of a political party. And then you go one step back and you go out of this dimension, basically, or more accurately, you go out of the frequency range called visible light that we can decode and therefore see as a physical experience. These reptilian entities seem to operate, and again, it's not just reptilian. There are many different kinds of entities that do not have a human form that operate just outside of human sight, and history has recorded them as demons and all this stuff. But the reptilian part of it seems to be very significant to the controlling systems on the planet today. And they operate just outside of visible light. Therefore, we don't see them in the normal course of events. That's just basically like a ghost. When you're looking at a ghostly figure, most of them don't look solid because they're operating just outside of your frequency. Just enough for you to perceive something, but not enough for them to appear to be, have solidity. This is very similar to having a radio and it not quite being on the station. You can hear the station, but there's what we call interference, and it's not sharp. Visually, that's what's happening when people see these ghostly, ethereal type figures. So shape-shifting is not the movement from a dense physical body to a dense physical body. It would appear from the endless research that I've done and people I've talked to all over the world and all the rest of it put together, my own experiences sometimes, that what we're looking at are these hybrid bloodlines. Because of the hybrid nature of the DNA, the software program, they have a vibrational sympathy with that which interbred with them. And this doesn't have to be physical interbreeding either, as I'll come to. And so these bloodlines can be, quote, possessed, their emotional, mental faculties taken over much more easily than the general run of the population does not have that hybrid DNA, thus that vibrational sympathy, compatibility between the two energy fields. So what they're doing in effect is using the secret society network they've set up to manipulate these bodies into power, but in doing so they're putting themselves into power because they're controlling the mental and emotional processes of these vehicles. Now, when we look at, say that's a major politician or something, when we look at him with our five-sense sight, we are going to decode that level of him that is operating with invisible light. So what do we see? We see a human. But behind him, just outside of that frequency range, we'd see something very different. And I've met endless people who've seen it, who do have that ability to move their visual frequency range further than the norm. So what is happening is, with shape-shifting, or one way that it's happening, is sometimes that energy field just outside of visible light moves into that frequency range. It sometimes happens when this vehicle is going through great emotional turmoil. I've had that story told to me many times when people have seen this, the circumstances surrounding it. And at that point, this energy field enters visible light and becomes the prime forward energy field. And then it goes back again. To the observer, who is decoding that energy field through the brain and turning it into a physical experience, what he observes only in his head is human, non-human, human. Did you see that? But it wasn't physical. It was a change in the decoding of the brain of the energy field it's observing. And this interbreeding can happen without coming into the physical, because these are energy fields, and these energy fields can send down genetic codes down into this reality. It's horrible to think about, but I've talked to a number of people around the world, women, who've been in captivity in places like the Mormon network in Salt Lake City, who have been taking part in rituals, obviously forced to take part, who are being raped on sacrificial altars under the Mormon church, other places too, and other organizations, but I'm just thinking of one in particular. And she told me, in the same story I've heard elsewhere, she looked up while this rape's going on, and around the rapist was this ethereal, non-human figure. Through this energy connection, things can be sent through to affect the genetics, the software program of the child that results from that situation. Because to them, like I say, they know it's a computer, and they know the computer software can dictate behavior and perception, and they want puppets it may sound strange, but I feel for a lot of these people in power on the human level, because they're just puppets themselves, like bloody robots. Here you go. A lot of these people are not in control of their own perception. And this is why, you know, what they do a lot is they'll target someone. What they want to know is who's got the bloodline and who hasn't. Because this bloodline genetics won't manifest itself in cold-blooded behavior and all the rest of it that we see unless those codes are open. It's like having a computer. It's got lots of codes, but unless you open them, it doesn't affect the computer screen, in other words, the reality of the computer. You have to open it, and what they do is target a lot of these people this is why they want a DNA database. They want to know who's got it and who hasn't, and that gives them obviously a great way of finding out. And then they target these people, and suddenly these people who know nothing about it, they're suddenly sponsored by very powerful people, and they become big in politics and law and all the rest of it. And through that, they get pulled into the secret society network, and they go through these rituals, and they think it's just some, you know, ancient ritual, it's just tradition. They don't realize that what these rituals are designed to do is to affect them genetically, to open these codes. And how that manifests itself in experience is of seeing people who, for instance, came into politics with a good intent to try to make a positive contribution, and they end up, after a while, being the absolute epitome of everything they came into politics to challenge, because there's been a process of personality takeover. It's not always for that reason, but that's one of them. So what we're looking at, I would suggest, but you know, people make of it what they will, are fields where we decode the human one, but behind it is another one that looks anything but human. And someone sent me this picture. I don't know who it's of, but he's got very reptilian-type eyes. And a friend of mine has been working, and what you have are 3 different levels of control, though it goes on further. But that's for another day, another time, and a lot more research. But this is one level of it, which is the dark suits, as I call them. And I found this picture on the internet. I thought, how perfect. They're like hollow shells. Body. The Queen is a hologram. Like we're all holograms. And if she shifts, it's because the hologram has shifted. The decoding system in the observer has shifted, not her physical body. Holographic hollow shells. Necessarily all of them, but significant numbers are. Others are just gophers who don't know what's going on and are just play the game without realizing the game they're playing. Behind them are those that operate in the shadows that I talked about earlier, who, no matter who's in power, what part... And today you've got children's books and stuff which are talking about reptilian morphing into humans and stuff, and what we call shapeshifting. Now, of course, when you're talking about this for the first time, about shapeshifting, I mean, people go, crikey, what is he on? Because understandably, what they're perceiving is a solid body changing into a solid body. Not possible, mate. I know, I agree with you, but I ain't saying that. Because there is no physical, therefore there's not a shape shift from a physical solid body to another solid